My name's Ken Munro, and I'm one of the partners at Pentest Partners. Unconventionally, like I think many people in the early days of the cybersecurity industry, I wasn't one of those who came out of military. I came from the commercial sector. I spent a long time working in hotels and restaurants, bizarrely, and it was going very well until I was investigating the point of sale system at the time in the restaurant, which was interesting and it appeared to be DOS based. And I think my manager at the time found me printing off, of all things, my mortgage amortization statement onto a restaurant bill. And I think he decided my career lay elsewhere. Now, by some fluke, one of our large customers was a company called Dr. Solomon's, who I ended up applying to, got a job there, and ended up working in the antivirus industry for several years. And what I absolutely love about Dr. Solomon's, particularly Alan Solomon himself, and also Graham Cluley, a name you'll probably know, excellent presenters. And what I loved about them was that instead of talking about viruses and malware, they told the story. And I've always taken that away, is people listen and buy into stories. They're not necessarily interested in the technical detail. They'll come to that if your story's good, but tell the story first. Wow, so we started PTP 10 years ago. A group of us got together, 10 of us, in fact, and started off down a path of trying to build a pen test firm, but with a particular interest in specialist areas. So we've always been really interested in developing niches. So perhaps in the early days, one of our big interests was around smart and connected toys. And as a result of that, you probably know we do quite a bit of work on connected stuff. But we also spend a lot of time developing into other niches. So looking at logical extensions from IoT, which is into hardware. Hardware led us into things like rail, automotive, and also into red teaming. So CBEST, GBEST, and similar work. So my job is really about helping encourage and ease the flow of creation of new content. So new markets we want to investigate, new research we want to get involved in, and helping push those to the team so that we take our new niche services to market. It's going to be hard to pick one. What I love, and just coming back to the point I made earlier about Dr. Solomon's, is they always looked for the story in something. And that's something I'll never forget. And that really is what has led and driven a lot of our research, because it's all very well doing some amazingly complicated, technically brilliant research, but if you can't explain the story, it's never going to really go past our own industry, even if it gets to there. So that's why we've always looked for products that there's a story involved in telling. And that's why the hot tub, for example, which frankly wasn't a desperately complicated vulnerability. It was the fact that some requests weren't authorized correctly on a public API, so you could do what you want. But it's the story that it led to that made it fun and interesting for us. So we've taken something that is frankly, yeah, it's an API flaw, but we've turned it into something that relates to everybody. And I think that's why the press and the media get interested, is because you've turned something cyber into something accessible. And that's why I really enjoy it. Same reason why I've always enjoyed my friend Kayla. Such a simple vulnerability. Bluetooth Classic, so BTEDR, with no pairing pin. Yeah, so what? Not much of a story. But when you then make a doll swear or spy on kids or snoop on them, that creates the story. And I'd encourage everyone who's doing research, think about where the story sits in the research that you're doing. I like to think we create a culture that gets people thinking a little bit outside the box. I think that comes by very nature of most pen testers, is they tend to think in a slightly different way. But we really actively encourage that, and also get people to write their thoughts. We encourage and incentivize that. We also go out and buy random things just on a whim. Some of the crazy things that end up on our expenses claims are a bit out there. I've raised some eyebrows in the past, but I think you've got to be able to do some crazy things. Not all of them will work. Some of them will be just added to the pile, the graveyard of smart junk that we have in one of our labs. But actually, every 2 or 3 times, you'll get a big hit, and something really fun will come that I think just helps. So is there a process? No, there is no process. I think it's just about creating a culture within the organization that actually really gets people thinking about research and the fun that comes from it. So every week we encourage members of our team to tell the story of something fun they've done. And we also encourage people to publish that, stand up, talk at cons, and tell their story to the world at large. Vulnerability disclosure, hey? And I think we're kind of hitting the bleeding edge of disclosure process. So because we do so much research, because we find so many vulnerabilities, we've also got a huge pile of vulnerabilities to disclose responsibly too. Now, in many cases, it's fairly straightforward. So, you get yourself a CV or whatever, you might go and then disclose to the vendor's PCERT team. However, most of the organizations that we're contacting and trying to disclose to just don't have vulnerability disclosure programs. So you have to go through a process of trying to find someone who will listen to you. And unfortunately, in many cases, the organizations just aren't set up to receive a vulnerability report. And it usually ends up with a bit of a train wreck. And many times that actually adds to or creates the story. And that's not really the outcome that we want from it. What we're trying to do is get the vulnerability fixed responsibly, vendor acknowledged, vendor say, thank you very much, and great, we can close it down and put it all to bed. But unfortunately, so many times vendors perceive you're threatening them, which I find really odd. They don't respond well to what they perceive to be criticism, which isn't going to be so good. And sadly, they often tangle themselves up in knots. So from time to time, we'll get cease and desist letters from lawyers that really show a complete lack of understanding of the law and very stroppy responses. So sadly, that feeds the fires of the story. And you see numerous cases where my colleague, Andrew Tierney, Cyber Gibbons, put together a team of people who I think dealt with the ultimate failed disclosure, which was around the BitFi, the cryptocurrency wallet. And as a result of BitFi just refusing to accept it might have screwed up and, okay, we'll fix it, it turned into a very big press story and ended up with 2 Pony Awards at Black Hat. If I'm speaking to a CREST audience, then I'm sure most of you out there know exactly what to do. So decide if you need it or not, segregate, and then think about really good, strong, careful password management and multi-factor authentication. To the average consumer out there who maybe might not have the expertise to do that, I'd say really think carefully, do you need it? Where are you putting these devices? What have they got access to? I would broadly stick to the larger brands, not because they were or are any more secure, but because they have the resources to fix problems when they come. We found in the past big brand name products with big vulnerabilities, but when you report them, the vendors listen and they fix it because they've got a reputation at stake. So again, for the technical people among us, you know what to do. For those who maybe don't have the tech skills, just think really carefully how much you need it and be careful with your passwords. Well, particularly in IoT and other smart devices, I love it when work that we've done catalyzes change. When you see all the efforts, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to do what we do, our own time and our own money. And when you see a difference being made, that is probably the most satisfying thing of all. So when we saw, for example, California Senate Bill 327 enacted on the 1st of January this year, the senator that introduced the bill cited our work on My Friend Kayla as being the inspiration behind it. So that in itself was worth every piece of effort we put into it. But then when you see in the UK DCMS start proposing regulation, that's great. When you see the EU consulting and asking, because all the security flaws that keep being demonstrated just reinforce the need for regulation. And it makes me so happy and I'm so proud of my team when I see the world start to change based upon research that us and others have done. Keeping up with it all. I work with a really bright group of people who are just out there finding things left, right, and centre. And I want to do anything I can to encourage and inspire that, whether it being buying silly products or making time for it to happen. But it's just keeping up with it all because there's so much going on. So we do a weekly news roundup, so things that have happened internally in the organisation. And it's getting so big every week that it's getting hard to keep on top of. But you know what? Bring it on. That's the sort of problem I love, is more and more products I'm trying to disclose. Juggling multiple disclosures currently with vendors doing a good job and quite a few doing a really bad job when you're sitting there going, some of these aren't going to end well. So that's probably the most challenging, is keeping up with it all. Bring it on. I have loved every moment of working in this industry since I joined it in May 1996. I love the fact as an industry, you wake up and the world changes every single day. You wake up and you find a vulnerability's been discovered and actively exploited in something new. So you've gone from the industry being, yes, we're roughly on top of things, to just going left, sideways. And I love the challenge that every single day presents as a result of that. Just bring it on. If you're up for the same old, do not join the cyber industry. But if you're up for a fast-moving, fast-paced, ever-evolving, changing, learning career, this is the place for you. Yeah, so the great news about conducting lots of research is there's a lot of papers being written, and that's great. So our website is full of blogs on simple things to do. What are the top 10 things to do to start out with your IoT product, but also littered with great examples of what goes wrong when you don't do it right as well. So I would strongly recommend go out and buy a product from eBay or Amazon, cheap as you like, have a play, take it apart, figure out how it works, follow some of our videos, get onto YouTube, see what's going on. So do start taking things apart. That's the best thing. Ideally, not stuff you need to work again, because that's my biggest failure. Is I'm great at taking stuff apart, hopeless at putting it back together and making it work. Resources. I'd strongly advise anyone to follow CREST. I think some really good content's been put out by CREST. In terms of getting badges and things, I think the equivalency of CREST CRT with OSCP is really cool. So you can go and do entry courses like pen testing with Carly, and then get yourself your OSCP on the way through. That's a great way in, and I advise a lot of people to follow that path. Get yourself a CREST badge, get in, and you'll find yourself a great career in this industry.